Take a look at the very first iPhone. Now compare it to the latest one. At a first glance, it looks like a natural evolution, bigger screens, thinner bezels, better cameras, but if you take a closer look, you'll notice something else. Over the years, Apple has slowly, almost methodically been taking things away. Some of these changes were controversial, some sparked full-blown outrage, and some you might not have even noticed until they were gone. But here's the real question. Why does Apple keep removing things? Is it all about innovation, a way to push users into something new, or are we actually losing features that made the iPhone better? So today we're going to be breaking down some of the most significant removals in iPhone history, why Apple did it, whether it was a step forward or back, and what might be next. But before we dive into that, I just want to take a quick moment to talk about today's sponsor, Plod AI. Taking notes during meetings or a call can be a hassle. You either have to scribble frantically and miss half the details, or record on your phone, which sounds easy until a call interrupts it, your battery drains, or you have to dig through apps just to find the recording. That's where Plod Note changes the game. It's the world's first AI-powered voice recorder built with ChatGPT, designed to record instantly with one press. There's no unlocking your phone, no searching for an app, and no distractions. It's a credit card-sized device that magnetically attaches to your phone or laptop, and it records up to 20 hours straight without getting cut off. Unlike your phone, Plod Note actually does something with your recordings. It transcribes in 59 languages, detects speakers, and turns conversations into summaries, to-do lists, or action items automatically. Need to find something? Just ask the AI. It pulls up key details instantly, with no rewinding necessary. Phone recordings are unreliable, messy, and frustrating to manage. Plod Note is frictionless, uninterrupted, and actually useful. If you're tired of missing calls or wasting time sorting through audio, this is an upgrade you didn't know you needed, so check it out at the link below, and thanks to Plod AI for sponsoring the video. Back in 2015, Apple introduced 3D Touch, a feature that was supposed to change the way that we interacted with our phones. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was built straight into the display, offering an entirely new layer of functionality. Tap the screen and it worked like normal. Press a little harder and suddenly you had access to hidden menus, quick previews, and shortcuts that were meant to make everything feel faster and more seamless. On paper it sounded incredible. Apple even built it into iOS with system-wide support, giving developers the tools to integrate it into their apps. But there was just one problem. Nobody really used it. Sure, it had its moments. Some people used it for quick actions on their home screen, or peeking into links without fully opening them, but for most iPhone users, it was something they either forgot about or didn't even realize existed. And if there's one thing Apple doesn't like, it's a feature that takes up space without being essential. And by 2019, Apple quietly killed 3D Touch, replacing it with Haptic Touch, a software-based alternative that mimicked the functionality, but didn't require specialized hardware. The end result? The same long press gestures, but without the subtle pressure-sensitive interactions that made 3D Touch feel unique. So was this a step forward or back? Well, Haptic Touch is definitely simpler, no need to worry about pressing way too hard or not hard enough, but some diehard 3D Touch fans argue that it was way faster and more responsive, especially for things like moving the keyboard cursor or previewing notifications. Either way, Apple made up its mind. 3D Touch was gone, and no iPhone since has brought it back. Up next though, we have the removal of the home button. For nearly a decade, this was the way you interacted with an iPhone. One press took you home. A double press showed you your apps. A quick scan of your fingerprint and boom, you were unlocked. It was simple, it was reliable, and for a lot of people, it was the most iconic part of an iPhone. And then it was just gone. In 2017, Apple killed off the home button with the iPhone X, replacing it with gesture navigation and Face ID. There was no more pressing buttons and Touch ID to unlock your phone. Instead, you just swiped up and let Face ID do the rest. At the time, it was one of the biggest design changes Apple had ever made, and naturally, people had opinions. Some hated it, arguing that Face ID wasn't as convenient as Touch ID, especially when trying to unlock your phone at weird angles or while wearing sunglasses. Others missed the tactile feel of physically pressing a button, something that gestures just couldn't replace. But over time, people adjusted, because, well, they had to. And to be fair, Face ID was a major leap forward. It's more secure, works in the dark, and gets better with every iOS update. Plus, removing the home button gave us bigger screens with thinner bezels, something that felt futuristic compared to older iPhones. But here's the thing, Touch ID never really died. While flagship iPhones went all in on Face ID, Apple quietly kept the home button around on the iPhone SE lineup for many years, proving that a chunk of users still preferred it. And even today, rumors of under-display Touch ID keep popping up, hinting that Apple might bring it back in a new form someday. So was removing the home button the right move? Looking at the iPhone today, it's hard to imagine going back. But for those who still miss the simplicity of just pressing a button to unlock your phone, this was the end of an era. But moving on, for years setting up a new iPhone was simple. You pop out a tiny tray, slide in a small plastic card, and just like that, your new phone was connected to a network. It was a process that worked the same way across almost every phone on the market. But if you bought an iPhone in certain countries recently, you might have noticed something missing. In 2022, Apple decided to remove the physical SIM tray from iPhones in the US, making the iPhone eSIM only. Instead of inserting a physical SIM card, everything is now digital. Your phone number and carrier information are stored directly on the device. Apple calls this progress, but depending on who you ask, it's either a step towards the future or a massive inconvenience. On one hand, eSIM makes switching carriers easier, at least in theory. Instead of going to a store to get a physical SIM card, you can activate a new number instantly. It's also more secure. Since there's no physical SIM, there's nothing for thieves to swipe out if your phone gets stolen. And from a hardware perspective, removing the SIM tray frees up space for other internal components. But then there's the other side of the argument. eSIM isn't supported everywhere, and if you travel internationally, swapping to a local SIM isn't as simple as it used to be. Some carriers still make activation a hassle, and if you ever need to transfer your eSIM to a new phone, you better hope that your carrier system actually works like it's supposed to. Despite all of this, Apple isn't backing down. The iPhone 16 series is still eSIM only in the US, and it's probably only a matter of time before other regions follow. But with major Android brands still offering physical SIM slots, Apple's decision feels less like a natural evolution and more like another way of forcing users into their vision of the future. But speaking of forcing users into new features, we have the removal of the headphone jack. For years, this was the universal connection for headphones. No Bluetooth pairing, no dongles, just plug in and listen. It worked with any pair of wired headphones, didn't need charging, and had been a standard on phones for over a decade. And then Apple decided it had to go. In 2016, with the launch of the iPhone 7, Apple made one of its most controversial decisions ever, removing the headphone jack. And the reasoning?
Courage.
Apple claimed that removing the headphone jack allowed for better water resistance and more internal space for things like a bigger battery and the Taptic engine, but let's be real, the timing was way too convenient. The iPhone 7 also launched alongside the first-gen AirPods, kicking off Apple's full-scale push towards wireless audio. Naturally, people hated this change. Suddenly using wired headphones required an annoying dongle, which Apple also conveniently sold. Want to charge your phone while using wired headphones? Too bad, there's only one port now. And despite the backlash, other companies followed. Samsung mocked Apple at first, but by the time the Galaxy Note 10 launched in 2019, they had removed the headphone jack too. Today, nearly every flagship phone has ditched it, making wired headphones feel like a relic of the past. So was removing the headphone jack really about innovation, or was it just another way to push users towards buying more Apple accessories? Either way, the damage was done. The headphone jack is gone, and it's unlikely that it'll ever come back. It seems like Apple has a pattern. Every few years, they take something away, sometimes for innovation, sometimes for profit, and sometimes just because they can. The home button, gone. 3D touch, vanished. The headphone jack, probably never coming back. Even the SIM card is slowly being erased. And the craziest part, people always adjust. No matter how much backlash a removal gets, eventually users move on because they have to. Apple doesn't leave much of a choice. They remove features, call it progress, and before you know it, the industry follows. But that leaves the question, what's next? Will Apple get rid of physical volume buttons and go all in on solid-state controls? Will they kill the charging port entirely and force everyone onto MagSafe? Or maybe they'll finally admit that not every feature needs to be removed in the name of progress. Either way, one thing's for sure, this won't be the last time Apple takes something away. So let me know in the comments, which removed iPhone feature do you miss the most, and what feature do you think is next to be removed?